My name is Lillian. I'm 27 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been living with my parents in Seattle while working as a marketing specialist. I've always been the responsible one, helping them financially, putting my own dreams on hold. I thought we had an understanding, a bond of trust. Until yesterday, when they asked me to move out, but keep paying rent, so my golden child brother could have my room. Before I share how my world collapsed, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt replaced by someone in your family. I grew up in a middle-class family in Seattle with my parents, Martha and George. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet suburban neighborhood with well-kept lawns and friendly neighbors who held barbecues during summer. The house wasn't fancy, but it had character with its slightly creaky hardwood floors and the apple tree in the backyard that produced the sweetest fruit every fall. It was the kind of place where memories were made both good and painful ones. Financially, I'm in a decent position with my marketing job at a local tech company, but Seattle's cost of living is notoriously high. Add to that my substantial student loans from putting myself through college and saving for my own place seemed like an impossible dream. That's why moving back with my parents 3 years ago made perfect sense. I could save money while helping them with their expenses as they approached retirement age. My mom, Martha, works as an elementary school administrator, and my dad, George, is a plumbing contractor whose business has seen better days, especially since the pandemic hit. When I moved back home, I noticed they were struggling more than they let on. Bills were piling up, and the house needed repairs they kept postponing. Without making a big deal about it, I started contributing more and more financially, eventually covering about 70% of the household expenses, including the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and even some home improvements like the new water heater we needed last winter. Then there's my brother Jackson, younger than me by 4 years. Growing up, it was always clear who the favorite was. While I had to maintain a perfect GPA to get a basic laptop for school, Jackson received the latest gaming system just for passing his classes. My parents attended every single one of his football games, cheering loudly from the stands, but repeatedly missed my debate competitions due to scheduling conflicts. On my 16th birthday, I got a used bicycle, while Jackson's 16th celebration was a lavish backyard party with a professional DJ and all his friends. Despite this unequal treatment, I genuinely love my family. Jackson can be self-centered, but he has his moments of kindness. Like when I was going through a difficult breakup 2 years ago, and he surprised me with my favorite ice cream and sat through an entire marathon of romantic comedies without complaining once. My parents, for all their flaws, taught me important values about hard work and resilience. I just wish they could see how their favoritism affected me over the years. My room in my parents' house isn't large, but I've made it my sanctuary. The walls are painted a calming sage green, a project I took on myself shortly after moving back. I've arranged my furniture to maximize the limited space with a small desk by the window where I sometimes work remotely, overlooking the backyard and that old apple tree. My bookshelf is filled with marketing strategy books, novels, and framed photos of friends and special moments. It's not just a room. It's my personal space that reflects who I am. Career-wise, I've been making steady progress. Last year, I received a promotion to senior marketing specialist, which came with a modest salary increase. With careful budgeting and consistent saving, I calculated that I could afford a down payment on a small condo in one of Seattle's outer neighborhoods within the next year or two. The thought of having my own place again kept me going through the challenges of adult life under my parents' roof. Living with parents in your 20s comes with obvious drawbacks. Dating becomes awkward when you have to explain why you still live at home. Friends sometimes make subtle comments that make you feel behind in life compared to them. But I've made peace with my situation, focusing on the financial security I'm building and the chance to strengthen family bonds before fully embarking on independent life. The past few months had actually been quite harmonious in our household. Mom had started asking for my input on household decisions, acknowledging my financial contributions. Dad and I developed a weekend routine of fixing things around the house together, bonding over home improvement projects. Even Jackson, during his occasional visits, seemed to have matured somewhat, showing interest in my career and asking for advice about his own job prospects after graduation. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly valued and appreciated in my family. The years of being overshadowed by Jackson seemed like they were finally behind us as adults. I was no longer just the reliable daughter who helped out. I was Lillian, a respected member of the family whose opinions mattered. This newfound dynamic made our home feel more comfortable than it had in years. I even started inviting colleagues over for dinner occasionally, no longer embarrassed about my living situation, but proud of the supportive family environment we had created. Little did I know that this sense of security and belonging was about to be shattered in the most unexpected way by the very people I trusted most. It happened last Sunday. Mom had texted everyone earlier in the week about a special family dinner. "I'm making your favorite pot roast," she wrote, which immediately raised my suspicions since pot roast is Jackson's favorite, not mine. Still, I looked forward to a nice meal together. When I came downstairs Sunday evening, I noticed Mom had used the good china, the set that only appears on Thanksgiving and Christmas. The table was set beautifully with the cloth napkins instead of paper towels, and there was even a bottle of wine breathing on the counter. Dad was fidgeting with his wedding band, a nervous habit he's had for as long as I can remember. Mom kept looking at the clock, then exchanging glances with Dad when she thought I wasn't watching. "Is there something to celebrate?" I asked, helping her bring the food to the table. "Jackson's joining us tonight," Mom replied with a smile that seemed a bit too bright. "He has some news." Jackson arrived 20 minutes late as usual, but with an unusual energy about him. He hugged everyone, including me, which was not our normal greeting. Throughout the appetizer course, my parents kept the conversation light, asking about my work week and sharing neighborhood gossip. But there was an underlying tension I couldn't quite identify. Finally, as Mom served the pot roast, Dad cleared his throat, the universal signal in our family that an announcement was coming. "Lillian, honey," Mom began, reaching across to pat my hand. "You know we've always appreciated you moving back home and helping out." I nodded, fork halfway to my mouth, suddenly not feeling very hungry. "Well, Jackson has been accepted into the graduate program at the University of Washington." Dad continued, pride evident in his voice. "It's a fantastic opportunity, but as you know, living expenses in Seattle are substantial." Jackson beamed across the table. "It's the top program in the state for business administration. I'll be starting next semester." I forced a smile. "That's great, Jackson. Congratulations." Then Mom delivered the bombshell. "We've been discussing it, and we think the most sensible solution is for Jackson to move back home while he's in grad school. It would help him save on rent and focus on his studies." I nodded again, still not seeing the problem. Our house had 3 bedrooms, my parents' room, my room, and the small guest room that doubled as Dad's home office. "So, you're converting Dad's office into a bedroom again?" It might be a tight fit with all of Jackson's things. The uncomfortable silence that followed made my stomach tighten. Jackson stared intently at his plate. Dad suddenly became very interested in refilling his water glass. "Actually," Mom continued, not quite meeting my eyes, "we were thinking Jackson would take your room. It's already set up as a proper bedroom, and it would be more comfortable for him during his studies." The words hung in the air as I tried to process their meaning. "My room. But where would I stay?" Dad finally looked up. "Well, honey, you're established in your career now. We thought this might be a good opportunity for you to find your own place, maybe that condo you've been saving for." The realization hit me like a physical blow. They wanted me to move out so Jackson could have my room. But there was more. "Of course," Mom added quickly. "We understand that you might need a little time to find the right place, and we'd still appreciate your help with the household expenses during the transition. Your contribution has been so valuable to us." The blood rushed to my face as understanding dawned. They wanted me to move out but continue paying their bills. They wanted to replace me with Jackson in the home I helped maintain while still benefiting from my financial support. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice unnaturally calm. "You want me to find my own place, pay rent somewhere else, and continue to pay rent here for a room I won't be living in?" "Not rent exactly," Dad clarified, as if this made it better. "Just continuing to help with family expenses. You know your mother and I are not as financially stable as we'd like to be heading into retirement." "And Jackson?" I asked, turning to my brother. "What will he be contributing?" Jackson shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I'll be a full-time graduate student. The program is really intensive, so I won't have time for more than a few hours of work study. But Mom and Dad are giving me free housing, so that's their contribution to my education." I sat in stunned silence, my appetite completely gone. The pot roast, which had smelled delicious minutes before, now turned my stomach. My parents had always favored Jackson, but this request went beyond anything I could have imagined. They weren't just asking me to move out. They were asking me to subsidize Jackson's graduate education while putting my own financial future on hold. "You're more independent, Lillian," Mom said dismissively, misreading my silence as consideration rather than shock. "You'll be fine on your own. You always have been. Jackson needs more support right now to succeed." Dad attempted to be diplomatic, though his allegiance was clear. "We know it's a lot to ask, but family helps family, right? You've always been so responsible. Jackson could learn from your example." "I need some air," I said, pushing back from the table abruptly. The legs of my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Excuse me." I walked to my room in a daze, closing the door quietly behind me. Sitting on my bed, I looked around at the space I had made my own. The sage green walls I had painted myself. The small reading nook in the corner, with the comfortable chair I had saved for months to buy. The desk where I had worked countless late nights to earn the promotion that my parents had barely acknowledged. My hands were shaking as the full weight of my parents' request sank in. They had always expected more from me while giving more to Jackson. But this was different. This was asking me to sacrifice my financial stability, my living situation, and my dignity, all so the golden child could have an easier path. As if on cue, my phone dinged with a text from Jackson. "Thanks for understanding, sis. You're the best. I promise I'll take good care of your room." I turned off my phone without responding and lay back on my bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep was impossible that night. My mind raced with memories of all the times I had put my family's needs before my own. All the sacrifices I had made that went unnoticed, all while Jackson received praise for the smallest efforts. By morning, I had spent hours calculating budgets, researching apartment costs in Seattle, and confronting the harsh reality of what my parents were asking. Moving out would deplete my savings, delay my own home ownership goals by years, and if I continued to help them financially, I would be working just to pay 2 sets of bills with nothing left to build my future. As dawn broke, I made a decision. For the first time in my life, I would need to stand up to my family and advocate for myself, even if it meant disrupting the peace we had so carefully maintained. The next morning, I found my parents in the kitchen. Mom was at the stove making pancakes, a calculated move since she knew they were my favorite. Dad sat at the table with his coffee and newspaper. The scene was so normal, as if they hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life the night before. "Morning," I said, heading straight for the coffee pot. I needed the caffeine for the conversation ahead. "Good morning, honey," Mom replied cheerfully. "Did you sleep well? I'm making blueberry pancakes." "Actually, I barely slept at all," I said, turning to face them both. "I was up all night thinking about what you asked of me." Dad lowered his newspaper, and Mom turned from the stove. The artificial normalcy disappeared as they registered my serious tone. "I need to understand something," I continued. "You want me to move out, find an apartment in one of the most expensive rental markets in the country, and still contribute to this household financially. Mom flipped a pancake before answering. It wouldn't have to be a large contribution, just enough to help us cover the basics until your father's business picks up again. And how long would that be? I asked. A month, a year, the entire time Jackson is in graduate school. Dad sighed. Lillian, when I was your age, I was already supporting myself completely. Times were different, but still, it's part of becoming an adult. When you were my age, Dad, a single income could support an entire family, and you could buy a house for what a down payment costs today, I countered. Besides, I am supporting myself completely. I'm also supporting a significant portion of this household. I pulled out my phone and showed them my banking app. For the past 3 years, I've paid 70% of the household expenses. That's the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and home repairs. I've contributed over $40,000 to this family while trying to save for my own future. Mom's expression hardened. When I was your age, I already had my own place, and I was raising you without asking my parents for help. This comparison ignited something in me. It was so typical of my mother to dismiss my reality and make it about her own experiences decades ago, in a completely different economic landscape. I'm not asking for help, Mom. I'm the one giving help. I've been carrying this family financially while living in a room the size of a closet, delaying my own life milestones to support yours and Dad's. And now you want me to leave but keep paying? How is that fair? The kitchen fell silent except for the sizzle of pancakes beginning to burn on the stove. Mom quickly turned to rescue them, her back rigid with tension. Dad's voice was softer when he spoke. Lillian, we appreciate everything you've done. We really do. But Jackson's education is important for his future, and he needs a supportive environment. And my future isn't important, I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. This request isn't just about a room, Dad. It's about a pattern that's existed in this family my entire life. The words were flowing now, years of buried feelings surfacing. When it came time for college, you took out parent loans for Jackson's full tuition at a private university, but told me to apply for scholarships and work part-time because there wasn't enough money for both of us, despite the fact that I had better grades and had been accepted to better schools. Mom turned around, spatula in hand. That's not fair, Lillian. We did what we could for both of you. What about my 21st birthday? I continued. You canceled our plans to attend Jackson's regional football game, a game that wasn't even important for his team's standing. You said we'd celebrate the following weekend, but then never did. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That was a long time ago, honey. We can't change the past. Or what about last year when I got my promotion? My voice was steady now, fueled by the rightness of what I was saying. I invited you to the celebration dinner my company was hosting. You both said you'd be there, and I saved seats at my table. But you never showed up because Jackson needed help moving some furniture into his apartment. Furniture that I ended up paying for, by the way. The sound of footsteps interrupted us as Jackson appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair tousled from sleep, looking confused by the tension in the room. What's going on? He asked, reaching for a coffee mug. We're discussing the living arrangements, I said directly to him. Mom and Dad want me to move out so you can have my room, but they expect me to keep paying bills here. Jackson had the decency to look embarrassed. Look, sis, I know it's not ideal, but grad school is expensive, and this would really help me out. And what are you contributing, Jackson? I asked pointedly. Because from where I'm standing, you're getting a free ride, while I work 60 hours a week to support myself and this household. That's not fair, he protested. I worked hard to get into this program. I deserve some support. And I don't, I shot back. I've been working hard my entire life. I put myself through college. I've been helping Mom and Dad financially for years. What exactly have you been doing with your money all this time? Jackson's face flushed. I have expenses too, you know. Like what? The new PlayStation you bought last month? The weekend trips with your friends? That luxury watch I saw you wearing at Christmas? My voice was rising again. You know what I did with my graduation money? I paid off one of Dad's credit cards when his business was struggling. What did you do with yours? Took a vacation to Cancun. That's enough, Mom interjected. Jackson needs to focus on his studies, not on working full-time. You've always been more independent, Lillian. You should be proud of that. And there it was, the familiar refrain. I was independent, not by choice, but by necessity, because they had decided early on that Jackson needed more support. My independence wasn't a personality trait. It was a survival mechanism developed in a family where my needs always came second. You know what I discovered last night? I said, my voice now dangerously calm. Jackson has a savings account with over $15,000 in it, money he could use for his own apartment. Jackson's eyes widened. How do you know that? You left your bank statement on the printer last time you visited. I saw it when I was printing work documents. That money is for my future, Jackson protested. I'm saving it for after graduation. No, I countered. According to your statement notations, you're saving it for a down payment on a BMW. So let me get this straight. I should deplete my savings to move out and continue supporting this household so you can live here for free while keeping your savings for a luxury car. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face had gone pale, and Dad looked caught between anger and shame. Jackson stared at his coffee mug, unable to meet my eyes. The tension in the room was unbearable. Years of unspoken resentment hung in the air between us. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry, not when I was finally standing up for myself. I have always loved this family, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I have always done what was expected of me, what was needed. I have never complained about the inequality, about how Jackson always came first. But this is too much to ask. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I need some space to think. Don't wait up. As I walked out the door, I heard my mother call after me, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over family expectations. And despite the pain, it felt like the first breath of fresh air after years of drowning. The cool interior of Amber Coffee House was a welcome relief from the emotional storm I'd just walked out of. My hands were still shaking as I texted Amanda, my best friend since college. Family emergency. Need to talk. Coffee. Amanda replied immediately. Oh, I'm in W, 15 minutes. Hang tight. The barista recognized me as a regular and had my usual order ready before I reached the counter. Rough morning? She asked sympathetically, noticing my distressed appearance. You could say that. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Taylor. I found a quiet corner table and tried to collect my thoughts. The confrontation with my family kept replaying in my mind, each hurtful word and dismissive gesture cutting deeper upon reflection. I'd never stood up to them like that before. Part of me felt guilty, while another part wondered why I hadn't done it years ago. Amanda arrived, spotted me immediately, and made a beeline for my table. One look at my face, and she abandoned her usual cheerful greeting. What happened? She asked, sliding into the chair across from me. I recounted the previous night's dinner and the morning's confrontation, my voice occasionally breaking as I described my family's expectations. They want you to… what? Amanda's outrage was validating. Her eyes widened in disbelief as I explained the financial arrangement my parents had proposed. That's not just unfair, Lil. It's exploitative. Am I overreacting? I asked, still second-guessing myself, despite knowing deep down I wasn't. Absolutely not, Amanda said firmly. They're treating you like an ATM, not a daughter. And the fact that Jackson has savings but still expects you to subsidize his living situation, that's next-level entitlement. Amanda had witnessed the unequal treatment throughout our friendship. She'd been there when my parents missed my college graduation ceremony because Jackson had a summer cold. She'd helped me move back home 3 years ago, understanding my financial reasoning while warning me about the emotional cost. You know, Amanda said thoughtfully, stirring her latte, my spare bedroom is yours if you need it. It's not fancy, but it's private and rent-free until you figure things out. Her offer brought tears to my eyes. You'd do that for me. In a heartbeat, that's what friends are for. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Plus, I've been saying for years that you deserve better treatment than what your family gives you. After coffee with Amanda, I called Sarah my mentor at work. Sarah was in her 50s and had navigated her share of family conflicts. Her perspective came from a place of experience. Family dynamics are complicated, she said after listening to my situation. But sometimes loving someone means setting boundaries with them. Your parents have come to expect your financial support without giving equal consideration to your needs. That pattern won't change unless you change it. Later that afternoon, I spoke with my cousin Rachel, who confirmed what I'd long suspected. Aunt Martha always tells everyone how strong and independent you are, and how Jackson needs more guidance. It's been their narrative for years. They genuinely believe you'll be fine no matter what, while Jackson would fall apart without their constant support. Rachel's words stung, but they also clarified things. My independence wasn't just taken for granted. It was used as justification for the unequal treatment. Back at my desk at work the following day, I couldn't focus. My colleagues noticed my distraction. Everything okay, Lillian? Asked Michael, our team lead. You seem a million miles away today. I gave him a simplified version of the situation, not wanting to unload all my family drama at work. To my surprise, he and other team members gathered around my desk during lunch, offering support and practical advice. My parents did something similar to my sister, shared Jasmine from accounting. She ended up moving out and cutting off financial support completely. It was rough at first, but they finally started treating her with respect when they realized she was serious about her boundaries. That evening, I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every dollar I'd contributed to my parents' household over the past 3 years. The total was staggering, even to me. I also researched local rental costs, confirming what I already knew. Moving out while continuing to support my parents would deplete my savings within months. Searching online for others in similar situations, I found a support group for adult children dealing with family favoritism. The stories shared there were eerily familiar. Through this group, I connected with Diane, a woman in her 60s, who had experienced a similar dynamic with her parents and brother decades ago. I wish I'd stood up for myself sooner, Diane told me during our video call. I spent my 30s and 40s trying to earn my parents' approval by being the reliable one, the one who always helped and never asked for anything. By the time I realized the pattern wouldn't change unless I changed it, I had missed opportunities for my own life and happiness. Her words struck a chord. How many opportunities had I already missed by prioritizing my family's needs over my own? How many more would I sacrifice if I continued this pattern? The support I received from Amanda, Sarah, my colleagues, and even strangers online strengthened my resolve. For days, I rehearsed what I would say to my family, preparing for their predictable responses and emotional manipulation tactics. I was done being the responsible one who received less love and respect in return. It was time to advocate for myself, even if it meant disrupting the family dynamic. With Amanda's unconditional offer of housing as my safety net and the validation of multiple people who cared about my well-being, I felt ready to return home and deliver my response to my parents' unreasonable request. This time, I wouldn't be swayed by guilt or familial obligation. This time, I would stand firm in my worth. 5 days after walking out of my parents' house, I returned with newfound determination. During my absence, I'd received multiple texts from my mother ranging from concerned, "Are you okay? Please let us know you're safe," to guilt-inducing, "After all we've done for you, this is how you treat us." My father had called twice, his voicemails awkward and non-committal, typical of his conflict-avoidant nature. Jackson hadn't reached out at all. The house was quiet when I entered, but I knew they were home. Mom's car was in the driveway and Dad's work boots were by the door. I found them in the living room, pretending to watch TV, but clearly waiting for me. "Lillian?" Mom began, her relief at seeing me quickly masked by a practiced expression of parental disapproval. "Where have you been? We've been worried sick." "I stayed with Amanda," I replied calmly, setting my bag down. "I needed space to think about everything." Dad muted the TV. "We understand you were upset, but disappearing for days isn't the mature way to handle things." I bit back a sarcastic response about their definition of maturity. Instead, I took out my laptop and the folder of financial documents I had prepared. "I want to show you something," I said, opening my detailed financial spreadsheet. "This is a complete record of my contributions to this household over the past 3 years." I turned the screen toward them, showing the monthly breakdown of mortgage payments, utility bills, groceries, home repairs, and other expenses I had covered. The final total was highlighted at the bottom, $43,728. "That's how much I've contributed financially while living here," I explained. "That doesn't include the countless hours I've spent helping around the house, driving you to appointments, or managing household paperwork." My parents stared at the numbers, seemingly shocked by the concrete evidence of my support. "We knew you helped out, but seeing it all added up like this?" Dad trailed off, adjusting his glasses as if the numbers might change upon closer inspection. "Now let me show you what you're actually asking of me." I continued, flipping to my second spreadsheet. The average one-bedroom apartment in Seattle now rents for $1,800 per month. Add utilities, internet, and parking, and we're looking at over $2,100 monthly for basic living expenses. I scrolled down to show my calculations. If I move out but continue to help with your household expenses, even at a reduced rate of $1,000 per month, I'd be spending over $3,100 monthly just on housing costs. That's 85% of my take-home pay, leaving almost nothing for food, transportation, healthcare, student loans, or savings. The silence in the room was heavy as my parents processed this information. Then Jackson walked in, a bowl of cereal in his hands despite it being dinner time. "Hey, you're back," he said casually, as if I'd just returned from a regular day at work rather than a 5-day absence after a family-fracturing argument. "Perfect timing," I said, my voice steady. "I was just explaining to Mom and Dad what their request would mean financially." Jackson shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it rekindled my anger. "It's just money, Lil. Family is more important, right? That's what Mom always says." His cavalier attitude pushed me over the edge. "It's just money. Let me be very clear about something, Jackson. Money represents time, effort, sacrifice, and opportunities. Every dollar I've given to this family is part of my life I'll never get back. Hours worked, experiences missed, dreams delayed. So no, it's not just money." I turned back to my parents, whose expressions had shifted from shock to discomfort. "For years, I've watched you prioritize Jackson's needs, wants, and comfort over mine. When we were kids, maybe I could understand. Maybe he needed more attention or support for whatever reason. But we're adults now, and the pattern continues." "That's not fair," Mom protested weakly. "Isn't it?" "Let's review. You want me to move out of the home I help pay for so Jackson can have my room? You expect me to continue financially supporting this household while also paying for my own place? Meanwhile, Jackson, who has savings, gets to live here rent-free so he can keep his money for a luxury car." Dad looked uncomfortable. "We didn't know about the car fund." Of course you didn't, I said, because you've never questioned Jackson's financial decisions or expected him to contribute the way you have with me. And that's the real issue here. It's not about the room or the money. It's about the message you're sending about who matters more in this family. Mom's face had gone pale, but her defenses were still up. We love you both equally. We've always done what we thought was best for both our children. Your actions tell a different story, I replied. And now I'm giving you a choice. Either we create an arrangement that's fair to everyone, or I move out completely and stop financial contributions altogether. Jackson nearly choked on his cereal. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I said, looking him directly in the eyes. If you want to live here during grad school, you can contribute from your savings just like I've been doing. Or you can find roommates like most graduate students do. But my savings are for after graduation, Jackson protested, unconsciously echoing his earlier claim rather than acknowledging the BMW fund. And my savings are for my future too, I countered. Why is yours more important than mine? Mom interjected, her voice tinged with panic. Lillian, you know we're counting on your help. Your father's business hasn't recovered fully, and we've had unexpected medical expenses this year. This was news to me. What medical expenses? Dad sighed heavily. Your mother's blood pressure medication doubled in price, and I needed physical therapy for my back that insurance only partially covered. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, momentarily distracted from my resolve. We didn't want to worry you, Dad said. You already do so much. I absorbed this information, suspecting it was at least partially a manipulation tactic, but also knowing my parents were at an age where health issues were becoming more common. It didn't change the fundamental unfairness of their request, but it added another layer to consider. I'm sorry about your health challenges, I said sincerely, but that doesn't justify treating me like a financial resource while treating Jackson like a valued son. That's not what we're doing, Mom insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. It is exactly what you're doing, I responded firmly. And here's my ultimatum. If you want me to stay and continue helping financially, Jackson finds his own place or contributes equally to this household. If you want Jackson to have my room and live here for free, then I'm moving out and you'll need to manage your finances without my contribution. The silence that followed was broken by Jackson's indignant outburst. This is ridiculous. You're holding Mom and Dad hostage financially just because you're jealous of me. Jealous? I laughed without humor. I'm not jealous of you, Jackson. I'm tired of being taken for granted while you're rewarded for doing the bare minimum. I work hard, he protested. Getting into this program wasn't easy. And supporting this family for years hasn't been easy either, I shot back. But the difference is that my hard work is expected and overlooked while yours is celebrated and rewarded. Jackson stormed out of the room, slamming his bedroom door like the teenager he sometimes still behaved as. My parents exchanged worried glances, probably calculating how they would manage without my financial support. Lillian, Dad began cautiously. We had no idea you felt this way. That's part of the problem, I said, softening slightly at his genuine confusion. You've been so focused on what Jackson needs that you haven't seen what it's cost me. But I'm done being invisible in this family. Mom opened her mouth to respond likely with another defensive comment, but Dad placed a hand on her arm. Martha, maybe we should take some time to think about what Lillian is saying. Mom's expression hardened. There's nothing to think about. If Lillian wants to abandon her family when we need her, that's her choice. She's always been difficult, always thinking only about herself. The unfairness of this statement, after everything I had just shown them about my contributions, was the final straw. I closed my laptop, gathered my documents, and stood up. I'm going to pack some essentials, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Amanda has offered me her spare room while I figure things out. You're leaving, Just like that, Mom asked, her tone shifting from accusatory to alarmed. I'm not abandoning anyone, I clarified. I'm establishing boundaries. Ball's in your court now. I went to my room and packed a suitcase with clothes, toiletries, and important documents. The personal items could wait for another trip. As I zipped up my bag, I took one last look around the space I had made mine. If this was goodbye, I wanted to remember it as it was, with my touches and personality embedded in every corner. On my way out, Dad caught me in the hallway. Lillian, wait. Your mother didn't mean what she said. She's just upset. She meant it, Dad, I replied sadly. She's always seen me as the difficult one because I don't fit neatly into the role you've assigned me. But that's not who I am, and I can't pretend anymore. Will you at least call to let us know you're okay? He asked, looking older than I had ever seen him. I will, I promised. But I need some time. The drive to Amanda's apartment was a blur of conflicting emotions. Relief and grief battled within me alongside a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own well-being over family expectations. Despite the pain, it felt like the first step toward a more authentic life. Late that night, as I lay on Amanda's pull-out couch, my phone lit up with a message from Dad. We should talk when you're ready. I think I understand better now. It wasn't an apology or a resolution, but it was an opening. For tonight, that would have to be enough. The first week at Amanda's apartment was a roller coaster of emotions. One moment, I felt liberated, proud of finally standing up for myself. The next, I was racked with guilt and uncertainty. Had I been too harsh? Was I being selfish? Years of conditioning to put my family's needs before my own weren't easy to overcome. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents. Mom's texts alternated between guilt trips, I didn't raise you to abandon your family, and peace offerings, I made your favorite lasagna if you want to come for dinner. Dad's approach was more measured, asking how I was doing and suggesting we talk when I felt ready. Jackson sent a single text, way to make everything about you. Mom's been crying for days. I shared these messages with Amanda as we sat on her balcony one evening, watching the Seattle skyline transition from day to night. Notice how they're all about how your actions affected them, Amanda pointed out. No acknowledgement of how their request affected you. Classic manipulation. She was right, and her observation helped me stay firm in my decision. Amanda's 2-bedroom apartment became my sanctuary. Though her spare room was small and filled with her exercise equipment and craft supplies, it offered what I needed: most space to breathe and think clearly away from my family's expectations. To take control of my financial future, I scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor. Shelley Klein's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Her practical approach was exactly what I needed. Based on your income, current savings, and goals, you have 2 primary options, Shelley explained, showing me projections on her tablet. You can either continue saving aggressively for a down payment, which means finding the most affordable living situation possible, or you can adjust your timeline and expectations for homeownership. We explored scenarios, sharing an apartment with roommates to minimize costs, looking at condos in less expensive neighborhoods, or considering a studio apartment instead of a 1-bedroom. Each option had trade-offs, but for the first time, I was making decisions based solely on my own needs and goals, not on what my family expected of me. The most important thing, Shelley emphasized, is that you stop the financial drain of supporting your parents' household. That's not sustainable if you want to build your own future. Armed with this professional advice, I began apartment hunting. The process was both exciting and daunting. Seattle's rental market was as brutal as I'd calculated, but I was determined to find something workable. After viewing several depressing options that were either wildly overpriced or dangerously run down, I found a promising studio apartment in Fremont. It was small but well-designed, with built-in storage solutions and large windows that made the space feel bigger. The location was ideal walking distance to shops and restaurants with good bus connections to my office. The rent stretched my budget, but without the burden of supporting my parents' household, I could manage it. 2 weeks into my stay with Amanda, Jackson unexpectedly texted asking to meet for lunch. Curiosity overcame my hesitation, and I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a sandwich shop halfway between our workplaces. Jackson arrived on time, a rare occurrence that signaled the importance of this meeting. He looked tired, the confident swagger replaced by something more subdued. "Thanks for meeting me," he began after we ordered. "Things have been weird at home since you left." "Weird how?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. Jackson sighed. "Mom and Dad are fighting. Dad says we've been taking advantage of you, and Mom says he's undermining her parenting. It's tense." I nodded, not particularly surprised, but interested that Dad was defending my position. "But that's not why I wanted to see you," Jackson continued. "I wanted to say I get it now, or at least I'm starting to." "Get what?" I prompted, curious about this apparent change in my usually self-centered brother. "How much you've been doing for everyone else while I've been coasting." He looked genuinely uncomfortable with this admission. "After you left, Dad showed me the spreadsheet you made. I had no idea you were contributing that much." I sipped my water, letting him continue without interruption. "And without you, guess who's now responsible for mowing the lawn, fixing things around the house, and helping Mom with the shopping?" He gave a rueful laugh. "Turns out I'm not very handy, and Mom doesn't appreciate my grocery selections." Despite everything, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Learning curve. "Yeah." Jackson hesitated, then added, "They're struggling without your financial help too. Dad's business had another setback last week. A big client canceled a project." The familiar weight of responsibility pressed on my chest. "That's unfortunate, but it's not my job to be their financial safety net." "I know," Jackson surprised me by agreeing. "That's actually what Dad said too. He told Mom they can't keep relying on you to solve their money problems." This was unexpected. Dad had always been passive in family conflicts, generally deferring to Mom's stronger personality. His standing up for me in my absence felt like a small but significant shift. "So, what now?" I asked. "Are you still planning to move into my room for grad school?" Jackson shook his head. "No, that plan's off the table. I'm looking at apartments with a classmate from the program, and—" He paused, looking almost embarrassed. "I took a second job bartending on weekends to help with expenses. Mom wasn't happy about it, said it would distract from my studies, but Dad backed me up." My brother taking responsibility. Dad standing firm against Mom's objections. It seemed my departure had catalyzed changes I never expected. As we finished our lunch, Jackson asked tentatively, "Will you come back home?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm looking at apartments, and I need to see real change in how I'm treated, not just temporary adjustments, because you all miss my financial contributions." Jackson nodded. "Fair enough. Just know that things are different. I'm different. At least I'm trying to be." Walking back to work after our lunch, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in Jackson for stepping up, cautious hope for my relationship with Dad, and lingering wariness about Mom's ability to recognize and change the family patterns. Most of all, I felt a growing confidence in my decision to prioritize my own well-being. That evening, I scheduled my first appointment with a therapist. Dr. Renee Wilson's office was a calm space with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that immediately put me at ease. "Family dynamics are powerful forces," Dr. Wilson noted after I explained my situation. "The roles we're assigned early in life can feel impossible to change. The responsible one, the golden child, the peacemaker, these aren't just behaviors, but identities that shape how we see ourselves and how others treat us." Over several sessions, we explored my complex feelings of guilt, resentment, and love for my family. Dr. Wilson helped me understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. The goal isn't to sever ties, she explained, but to transform them into connections that respect your autonomy and worth. With this professional guidance, I began to establish clearer boundaries in all my relationships. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while focusing on my family's needs. I joined a local hiking group, rekindling my love for the outdoors that had been pushed aside by responsibilities. I started a small container garden on Amanda's balcony, finding joy in nurturing plants on my own terms. The studio apartment in Fremont became available, and I signed the lease. The space was truly mine, and I took pleasure in decorating it exactly as I wanted, with no one else's preferences to consider. The color scheme of soft blues and grays created a tranquil atmosphere, and the minimalist furniture maximized the limited space. My favorite addition was a reading nook by the window, complete with a comfortable chair and small bookshelf. At work, my renewed focus and energy didn't go unnoticed. Michael called me into his office one afternoon with unexpected news. "The marketing director position for the new product line is opening up," he said. "I think you should apply. Your campaign ideas have been consistently innovative, and the leadership team has noticed. The promotion would mean more responsibility, but also a significant salary increase, potentially accelerating my financial goals. Without the burden of supporting my parents, I could actually imagine accepting such an opportunity without calculating how it would benefit my family first." 3 weeks after moving out, I received a text from my father. "Your mother and I would like to have dinner with you this weekend if you're willing. We've been doing a lot of thinking." I stared at the message for a long time, weighing my options. The desire to reconcile with my family competed with my fear of falling back into old patterns. After consulting with Dr. Wilson, I decided to accept the invitation, but with clear boundaries in place. "I'd be happy to meet for dinner," I texted back. "Saturday at Bella's Italian at 6 p.m. Choosing a restaurant rather than their home was deliberate, giving me the ability to leave if things became too intense. "We'll be there," Dad replied promptly. "Looking forward to seeing you." As Saturday approached, I prepared myself both emotionally and practically for the meeting. I knew what I needed to communicate and what boundaries I needed to maintain. With support from Amanda, my therapist, and the online group for adult children navigating difficult family relationships, I felt ready to face my parents without being swayed by guilt or manipulation. Whatever happened at that dinner would shape the future of our relationship. The uncertainty was daunting, but for the first time in my life, I was approaching my family as an equal, not as the responsible daughter who would sacrifice her needs for their comfort. That alone was a victory worth celebrating. Saturday evening arrived with a light drizzle typical of Seattle in spring. I arrived at Bella's Italian 10 minutes early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance and exit, a small but significant act of control. The familiar scent of garlic and fresh bread normally would have been comforting, but my stomach was too knotted with anticipation to appreciate it. My parents arrived precisely at 6 punctuality, being one of my father's few non-negotiable principles. Mom had dressed up more than usual, wearing the pearl necklace reserved for special occasions. Dad looked tired, but determined, his posture straighter than I remembered. They spotted me and navigated through the busy restaurant, the tension evident in their careful movements. "Lillian," Mom said, hesitating before leaning in for a hug that I returned somewhat stiffly. "You look well." "Thank you for meeting us," Dad added, squeezing my shoulder briefly before taking his seat. The initial conversation was awkward, focused on safe topics like the unseasonable weather and the restaurant's renowned lasagna. We ordered, and as the waiter departed with our selections, a weighted silence fell over the table. Dad broke it first. "Lillian, your mother and I have been doing a lot of reflecting since you left. We've had some difficult but necessary conversations." Mom nodded, her usual confident demeanor subdued. "We've realized some things about how we've treated you compared to Jackson. Things we didn't see before." "What things?" I asked, needing them to articulate their understanding, rather than accepting vague acknowledgments. Dad glanced at Mom, who took a deep breath before continuing. That we've expected more from you and given you less support in return. That we've taken your help for granted while praising Jackson for minimal effort. The simple acknowledgement of this pattern one I'd felt, but had never heard them admit to, was surprisingly powerful. My throat tightened with emotion I wasn't prepared for. I've also realized, Dad added, that I've been passive when I should have advocated for fairness. I saw the discrepancies, but convinced myself it was just different parenting approaches for different children, not favoritism. Our meals arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity of the conversation. I took a small bite of my pasta, barely tasting it as I processed their words. What brought about this realization? I asked, genuinely curious about the catalyst for this apparent change of heart. Partly your departure and the financial reality check, Dad admitted honestly. But mostly the conversations we've had since then, really looking at our behavior over the years. And Jackson moving out too, Mom added. He found an apartment with a classmate last week. This surprised me. Jackson moved out, but I thought the plan was for him to have my room. That was the plan, Mom confirmed, looking somewhat embarrassed. But after you left, he said he couldn't stay, knowing how unfair it was to you. He's been different since your conversation with him. More mature. He's also taken on more financial responsibility, Dad explained. He's contributing to our household expenses and working part-time at a bar downtown. Said it was time he stepped up. I absorbed this information cautiously, hopeful, but still wary. I'm glad to hear that, but I need to know this isn't just a temporary adjustment, because you need my financial support. What happens long-term? My parents exchanged glances, and Mom reached for her purse, pulling out a folded document. We've been to see a financial advisor, she said, passing the paper to me. This is our new budget and financial plan. We're making changes to be more self-sufficient. The document outlined reduced expenses, a plan to pay down debt, and Dad's strategy to revitalize his business with smaller, more reliable clients. Most significantly, there was no line item for contribution from Lillian in their income projections. We're not asking you to come back or to continue supporting us financially, Dad clarified. We want you to build your own life and future. We should have encouraged that all along instead of leaning on you. I want to apologize, Mom said, the words clearly difficult for her. When you showed us that spreadsheet, I was defensive because I was embarrassed. I've prided myself on being a good mother, but I failed to see how my actions were hurting you. Her apology, something I'd rarely heard from her throughout my life, left me momentarily speechless. We're not asking for immediate forgiveness, Dad continued when I didn't respond. Just an opportunity to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. What would those terms look like? I asked, still cautious, despite their apparent sincerity. Equal expectations for both our children, Mom replied promptly. Acknowledging and appreciating your accomplishments the same way we have with Jackson. No more assumptions that you'll always be the strong, independent one who doesn't need support or recognition. Dad nodded in agreement. And no more financial dependence. We're adults who should be managing our own finances, not relying on our children. Their answers reflected an understanding I hadn't expected. Whether this change would last remained to be seen, but the fact that they'd taken concrete steps like consulting a financial advisor and creating a new budget suggested their commitment was genuine. I appreciate your apology and the steps you're taking, I said carefully. But rebuilding trust will take time. I've spent years feeling less valued in this family, and that won't change overnight. We understand, Dad said, reaching across the table to cover my hand with his. We're prepared to prove ourselves through actions, not just words. Jackson suggested family counseling, Mom added, surprising me again. He found a therapist who specializes in family dynamics. We've already had one session, just the three of us, but we'd love for you to join when you're ready." The image of my brother, the one who had always taken the path of least resistance, now advocating for therapy and working to support himself, was almost difficult to reconcile with the Jackson I knew. It seemed my standing up for myself had created ripples that affected everyone. "I'll think about the counseling," I promised, not ready to commit, but open to the possibility. "And I'd like to stay in touch while I continue building my independent life." "Of course," Mom agreed quickly. "We want to be part of your life, but on terms that respect your boundaries." We finished our meal with lighter conversation, catching up on work and other aspects of our lives that had been overshadowed by the conflict. The tension hadn't completely dissipated, but there was a new honesty between us that felt like the foundation for a healthier relationship. As we parted outside the restaurant, Mom hugged me again, this time with a gentleness that reminded me of childhood moments before the pattern of favoritism became so entrenched. "I'm proud of you, Lillian," she whispered. "Not just for your achievements, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself, even when it was to us." Dad hugged me next, his embrace solid and reassuring. "We love you, kiddo. Always have, even when we didn't show it right." "I love you too," I replied, surprised by how much I meant it despite everything. "We'll figure this out one step at a time." 6 months later, our family gathered for Thanksgiving, a holiday that had often highlighted the unequal treatment in our family. In previous years, Jackson's favorite dishes dominated the menu, his stories commanded attention at the table, and his comfort was prioritized in seating arrangements and timing decisions. This year was markedly different. The menu included my favorite cranberry apple stuffing alongside Jackson's preferred sweet potato casserole. The dining table had been rearranged so everyone had equal space and could fully participate in conversations. Most noticeably, Mom made a point of asking about my recent promotion with genuine interest, spending as much time discussing my career achievements as Jackson's graduate program progress. Regular family counseling sessions had helped us develop healthier communication patterns and understand the roots of the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamic. Dad had become more assertive in ensuring both children received equal consideration, while Mom had worked on recognizing and changing her tendency to coddle Jackson while expecting self-sufficiency from me. Jackson, perhaps the most transformed by the experience, had developed into a more responsible adult. He managed his own finances, contributed fairly to family gatherings, and had even apologized for his years of entitled behavior. Our relationship had evolved from the competitive dynamic imposed by our parents' favoritism to a genuine sibling bond based on mutual respect. My own life had flourished with the removal of the financial burden and emotional strain of being the family support system. The promotion at work had accelerated my savings plan, putting home ownership within reach months earlier than projected. I'd started dating Alex, a kind and thoughtful architect who understood the importance of healthy boundaries, having navigated his own complex family dynamics. Most importantly, I'd learned to recognize my own worth outside of what I could provide for others. The constant need to prove my value through sacrifice and responsibility had diminished, replaced by the understanding that I deserved care and consideration simply because I was a human being worthy of respect. Standing in my parents' kitchen after Thanksgiving dinner, helping Mom with the dishes while Dad and Jackson tackled the dining room cleanup, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. "You know," Mom said, handing me a plate to dry, "I was terrified when you moved out. Not just because of the financial impact, though, that was significant, but because I was afraid we'd lose you completely. That you'd decide we weren't worth the effort." "I was afraid too," I admitted. That nothing would change, that I'd always be seen as the strong one who didn't need support or appreciation. Mom set down the dish she was washing and turned to face me fully. "I'm so sorry for making you feel that way for so many years. When I look back at how differently we treated you and Jackson, I'm ashamed. You deserved better." "We're building better now," I replied, the forgiveness I'd been working toward in therapy feeling more complete with each genuine interaction. That's what matters. In the living room later, as we all relaxed with coffee and pie, Jackson nudged my arm. "Remember when you first stood up to Mom and Dad about the room situation? I was so angry with you for rocking the boat." "I remember." I nodded, recalling his text about making everything about me. "Best thing that could have happened to all of us," he continued. "I needed that wake-up call. We all did." Dad raised his coffee mug in a small toast. "To Lillian for having the courage to demand better. You've made this family stronger by refusing to maintain the status quo." As I drove back to my apartment that night, I reflected on the profound lesson I'd learned through this painful but ultimately transformative experience. Loving your family doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth or accepting unequal treatment. Sometimes, the most loving action you can take for yourself and others is to stand firm in your value and demand the respect you deserve. My journey from family doormat to respected individual hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been painful confrontations, difficult truths, and moments of doubt. But in choosing to advocate for myself rather than continuing the pattern of unequal treatment, I had not only improved my own life, but catalyzed positive change for my entire family. The relationship with my parents and brother remained a work in progress, with occasional relapses into old patterns that required gentle but firm correction. Yet the foundation had shifted from expectation and obligation to mutual respect and genuine care, a healthier dynamic that allowed all of us to grow and connect in ways I once thought impossible. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, my phone pinged with a group text from Mom. "So grateful for today. Love you both equally and immensely." A simple message, but one that would have been unimaginable a year ago, and all the more meaningful for the journey we had taken to reach this point of authentic acknowledgement. Have you ever had to stand up to your family for fair treatment? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support the channel. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your family is to break unhealthy patterns and create space for a new, more balanced relationship to grow. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gives you courage if you're facing similar challenges in your own life.